Part 2. Art and graphics are ugly. What can I say? The visuals are a mess. This is something that even staunch defenders of this game are always able to at least concede. This game, visually, is hideous. It's hard to fully explain why the graphics look this bad at a first glance, but the more you look, the more you see what's really going on. To start, Halo has never quite been at the top of the graphics ladder. Although I'm putting my foot down and saying that there has never been a Halo game that looked bad. At least there wasn't until Halo 4. I talked extensively about Halo CE, and I think it's a beautiful showcase of what I'm talking about when I talk about pretty visuals. That is a magnificent looking game, and it's aged very gracefully. Its colors pop, the environments look beautiful, and overall just has a really nice, clean, crisp image. I'd say the same mostly applies to Halo 2 as well. Halo 3, on the other hand, has some gorgeous lighting, and it was an amazing showcase for what the 360 was capable of. Bloom and HDR still hold up today. Environments were detailed, and once again, it simply had just some beautiful color choices. Skipping ahead to Reach, that game once again had some really nice graphics and a solid art style. Halo Reach visually was a bit more gritty and toned down, but even then it still looks pretty good, especially today. For a 12-year-old Xbox 360 game, it's hard to deny that Halo Reach really looks good, especially with the environments. Bungie nailed the visuals for Reach. So you can kind of understand why Halo 4 had an expectation to live up to. It needed to have a visually interesting but clear and crisp image, beautiful colorful environments, and just generally an atmosphere that allowed players to feel like they could just enjoy themselves. You would think that players are going to spend hundreds of hours in each of these levels and maps. The least you could do is give them a nice atmosphere. But no, Halo 4 broke all these rules, and as a result it looks like a disgusting mess. First, the visuals themselves. They are butt ugly. 2012 was right in the middle of the brown and gray era for video games, and Halo 4 was no exception. I am not exaggerating when I say that every single frame of this game has a slight brown and gray filter to it. I'm not kidding. Matter of fact, a lot of levels are filled with this color, and just this color, to the point where it kind of gives the world a really gross, sickly feeling. Kind of like there's a layer of smog over everything. There's also the problem with lighting, which is just not working, I guess? I think this is just a result of 343 not knowing how to program a lighting engine. Everything is either bathed in completely overexposed bright flat lighting, or super dark lighting that you can't even see. And there is no in between. Alright, we're gonna have to play the comparison game here. Let's look at Halo 1. Look at how subtle the shaders are in that game. Look at how clear everything is without having too many over-the-top lighting effects or super blown-out contrast. Now look at Halo 4's visuals. It's either way too bright or way too dark, sometimes both in the same level, so everything has this gross, high contrast look to it. It's hard to explain. I keep bringing up visual clarity, and this is what I'm talking about. Halo 4's image is so messy that you can literally feel a disconnect between you and the game, like there's a layer of mud covering your monitor. Everything is bathed in a subtle brown hue, and it completely ruins the atmosphere of the entire game, no matter what. To further my point, let me show off a little experiment I made. This is the second mission from the campaign, and it's basically trying to copy off of the mission Halo from Halo 1. I mean, it's the exact same setup. You had an intro on this human ship full of tight corridors, and now you're in a big, brightly lit open area. This is a mission where you are supposed to be in utter awe of Halo 4's world, but instead of the player being completely immersed, what we're given is this really ugly looking brown world with too much bloom and not enough greens and blues. This was bugging me because for the life of me, I couldn't tell why this image was so ugly. I mean, it has some of the features of a Halo game, yet just something about it feels completely off. So I decided to do a little bit of image manipulation. I took the image of the game, this brown colored mess, and then I modified the color temperature to something a little colder. I turned down those browns and oranges, add a little blue, then I grabbed those greens and I bumped them up a smidge with saturation, just so they pop a little better. Finally, I grabbed that blue and make it much clearer, and god damn, look at the image now. Already it's looking a lot better than what 343 tried to give us. Now, it's not perfect, not by a long shot, but it's definitely a huge step in the right direction, and should showcase to all of you just how fucked this game's visuals are. I also don't want you thinking I turned up the saturation. Oh no, this was mostly a result of color temperature. I was actually going to do an opposite experiment to Halo 1 to see if I could turn that game's visuals into a brown colored mess, more reminiscent of something 343 would do. Luckily, they already did it for me with the Anniversary Edition. Yep. I'm starting to get the impression that 343 just doesn't understand color, and they should never be left alone with a color palette. When some guy with a simple color corrector is able to make a clearer, better looking image in his free time than probably some graphics artist on a paid salary, you know things aren't going well. And the environments. What is a Halo game without them? Well, For Halo 4, environments took a massive downgrade. And honestly, it seems like making ugly, uninteresting worlds is 343's specialty. We've got super dark human corridors, super brown exteriors, super bright Forerunner corridors, and that's it. That's literally all Halo 4 has to offer. I find it hilarious how for every single environment Halo 4 tries to make, some other Halo game has done it much better. Often in multiple Halo games, in fact. Grassy environments are, like I mentioned, way too desaturated and brown. Same goes for deserts. And what is going up with the sky? Why are some areas given a brown or even green skybox? What happened to Halo's bright blue sunny skies or deep purple nights? Give me some variety, Jesus. Why does everything look like it's covered in smog? Half the time the game looks like I'm in a muddy, murky swamp. These environments are atrocious. Also, wait just a sec. What is going on in these Forerunner corridors? Like, seriously, what the fuck is going on? Everything is way too shiny, everything is silver, and everything glows either blue or orange. I am not kidding. Your screen is covered by lens flares as you run around in this J.J. Abrams nightmare world. This is the entirety of Halo 4's Forerunner levels. Forerunner levels in Halo 1, 2, and 3 usually had a pretty chill ambiance to them. They were quiet and ancient. Walls had weathering on them. Corridors had subtle shading that gave everything a pretty relaxing vibe. Lighting that wasn't too bright, but also not too dark. It was just right. There was also a variety in Forerunner buildings as well. You had different building materials like grays, bronze, gold, and even faded blue metal throughout the different rooms and interiors. I mean, sure, you had glowing lights, but they never drowned out the image. No lens flares, no bright lights shining in your faces, no overblown contrast or lighting. Everything felt really tranquil, and it's kind of what made Forerunner interiors in the previous Halo games quite relaxing to play through. Even though they were mysterious and kinda creepy, you felt like you could just plop down a chair and absorb all the ambiance. Like, that was great stuff. Halo 4 took a lot of changes by making every single Forerunner interior silver with glowing blue or orange lights. That is it. Lights are bright and shining right in your fucking face. Everything is lit up too. Instead of the mysterious ambiance a Halo Ring or Arc once had, Requiem is this loud mechanical nightmare. This aesthetic is very different from any other Halo game, and I really don't think it fits. You could say that's subjective. Whatever, it might be. I mean, I just know what my brain likes and doesn't like, and Halo 4, I do not like. All these environments are so gross and ugly to be in, and this also translates directly over to the multiplayer levels. This is a game coming directly off of Halo Reach, and say what you want about that game's multiplayer, nobody can deny the gorgeous scenery that Reach had, not to mention how beautiful Forge World was. Halo 4's maps don't have the same treatment, as once again they're all shrouded in the same brown tint as everything else. You would think that somewhere along the line, someone at 343 would realize that players are going to be spending hundreds, if not thousands of hours on each individual map. I mean, if you're a map creator, wouldn't you want each one to have a nice, interesting atmosphere? I mean, let's look at previous Halo multiplayer maps. You had serene woodlands, rocky canyons, quiet deserts, desolate space stations, empty Forerunner temples. Not only did they have a really good atmosphere, but they had really good looking colors. Halo 4 doesn't have this. Not one bit. Just those grimy Call of Duty ripoff maps that are brown and gray make you feel like you're playing the game through a migraine. I could rant more about the environments, but again, I think I said my piece. Anyways, the one thing I want to bring up a little more than the rest of the graphics are the actual designs themselves. When people talk about Halo 4 and 343 in general, the very first thing that's brought up is their art style, and we're going to talk all about it, because models, weapons, armor, it all looks like shit. It's hard to break down quite what went wrong with 343's designs, but all anyone knows is that they just look ugly. Weapons look lame, armor looks hilarious, enemies were redesigned to the point of absurdity. I just think 343 has a shit art department, that's it. The gun designs are all a great example of where they clearly wanted the weapons to look super sci-fi and slick. Meanwhile, you look at, say, Halo 3's weapons, and they all look pretty grounded for the most part, aside from the alien weapons. Human guns all have this really dark black gunmetal aesthetic to them. They look like real vicious weapons. You could argue that they have a bit of a retro futurism aesthetic to them. I think Bungie just knows what they were doing. They wanted guns that looked cool and impactful. Halo 4, I don't think quite got the memo, and they tried to add in way too many details to show off the raised polygon count. All that happened though is that a lot of the guns just became unrecognizable and they started to look like toy guns. Like the BR looks completely different, it looks like a Nerf gun. I don't even know what to make of the shotgun, like look at it. I would have been fine with a simple pump action Halo Reach shotgun, but this is just... No. I think more importantly though, it's armor designs, because Halo 4 fucked up every single visual for enemies, NPCs, and even the player. Enemy designs took a really bad nosedive. Elite's got the biggest downgrades too. Gone is the sleek profile of the classic Elite. In their place is this hulking monstrosity with big chunky armor and helmets. Also, I guess you don't need sleeves in the future, because these guys have their arms out the entire time. Hey, wouldn't you want to put a little bit of armor in there? What if you get shot in the arm? What's even more annoying is that the armor variations between Elites and Halo 4 is so fucking hard to see thanks to how messy the game's visuals are. For whatever reason, having a clear image and clear concise color scheme is too old school for Halo 4. Blue, red, yellow, that works. It's simple, it's easy to understand, a child can read it. In Halo 4, 343 were too afraid to make the Elites bright blue or bright red, or even bright gold, so all the armor is way more desaturated. You combine that with the fucked up lighting engine that gives a brown-gray tint to everything, and now you have two Elites who both look purplish brown. Gold Elites don't even look cool anymore because the bloom and lighting is so bad that they look more gray than they do gold. Hey, look at this Elite right here. Can you tell me what color it is? I'll wait. If you guessed bright red, you'd be right. Meanwhile, let's look at another Halo game. Oh yeah, look at that. That is much easier to see. The bright red armor, even in the dark, is super easy to identify even at a distance. A lot of other enemies didn't fare too well either. Grunts look ugly, jackals are, I don't know what the fuck they're supposed to be, look like dinosaurs. Ironically though, I think the worst change by far was done to humans, all because of their armor. Master Chief's armor, dear God, is it ugly. When he was first debuted in his new suit, everybody kind of raised their eyebrows in concern. His armor was chunkier, was more slung around his body like it hung over his actual suit. His helmet looked bad, his chest plate was disproportionate to the rest of his body. Matter of fact, the multiplayer armor had this problem as well. Everything is wrong with 343 armor, even leading it to Halo 5. All the armor just looks too goofy, it has weird proportions, and it lacked a streamlined look. Halo 3 and Halo Reach had some beautiful fucking armor that looked really slick, it fit together, it also fit the military aesthetic. Reach ventured a little bit into a style called tactical. You know, you got like pouches and gun belts and knives all over the place, but it still stayed pretty tame in regards to armor varieties. Everything looked nice, it was all streamlined, and it didn't look out of place. In Halo 4, it's all a mixed bag, most of it bad. This also isn't helped by Halo 4's terrible lighting engine, which gives every Spartan the appearance that their armor is made out of plastic. Also, that bright colored undersuit takes away the cool black contrast that the OG Halo armors had. Halo 3 colors, I think, were some of the best looking in the series. Even though it had really limited armor choices, that color palette looked amazing. That super dark black undersuit with the bright colorful Halo 3 armor. Here though, the armor looks really bad because none of the colors mesh at all. Like Master Chief doesn't have a black undersuit anymore. Like it's this lighter gray shade with a lot of green in it now. Like it doesn't mesh that well anymore. I mean, some of the multiplayer helmets are kind of neat. Most of them are hideous though. Also, the primary and secondary colors are odd because you don't get sectioned off areas of the armor like you did in Halo 3 and Reach. Like in those games, you would have shoulder pads, arms, and legs, then that would be designated as secondary color. But instead in Halo 4, you have these like weird patterns and stripes that go down across every single armor piece. But I don't know, this just makes them look even more like Power Rangers. It's a bad look. So that's what I have to say on the visuals. They're just kind of ugly. Whenever I would think back to Halo 4, I would always remember how weird the colors were, and now I can see why. Environments are brown and muddy, enemies are ugly and indistinguishable, and the art style turns what was once a unique and distinct aesthetic into something completely unrecognizable. People love to make fun of 343's crappy changes to the Halo art style, and Halo 4 is the poster child of that. So, I felt I had to get that out of the way. Graphics aren't the be-all end-all to a game, but I think they're pretty important. Visual cues are important to gameplay, and Halo 4 simply doesn't have them. But I feel it's a pretty good tangent. At this point in the video, I feel a lot of people think I'm being pretty subjective. I've talked about what I didn't like with the story and what I don't like with the visuals. This section, though, I think I'm going to be a little more objective in talking about the gameplay and the combat. Because to me, this is the most important reason why Halo 4 is a bad game. I can forgive a bad story or bad graphics, but if the gameplay sucks, there's nothing that can be done to save that game. Halo 4's gameplay is fucking atrocious. This is a hard thing to quantify, given how I know a lot of people are going to try to say that they themselves personally like the gameplay. Hey, I'm not arguing whether or not you can enjoy Halo 4's gameplay. I'm just arguing that it's an objective downgrade from what came before. It's also no surprise that this was the longest section to write. Playing Halo 4 is a miserable experience, and at a first glance it's hard to understand quite what's wrong. I mean, it sort of plays like a Halo game, it sort of feels like a Halo game, and it has some stuff that other Halo games have. So why doesn't it feel like a Halo game? It's because there's a little part of your brain that's telling you that something is horribly wrong with this game. You may not have noticed it, but your brain did. So let me break down the main culprits behind Halo 4's mediocre gameplay and combat. There's a lot to unpack here and we don't have much time. First, the Prometheans. Prometheans are, there's no beating around the bush. They're a bad enemy. There's a lot that's wrong with Prometheans, and in a sense you can kinda see how 343 were backed into a corner. Promethean Knights are unfun and cheap and annoying. Before I can explain why, we need to analyze Halo's gameplay sandbox and what these Knights were meant to be. At least what I think they were meant to be. There's a distinct role in every single Halo game's enemy lineup, that being the player counterpart. These are enemies that stand toe-to-toe with the player. They have shields, they're intelligent, they have their own strategies, and they also have a variety of weapons and ranks that signal how dangerous they are. For most of the games, these are the elites. They are the Halo staple, with their bright, colorful armor, evasive movement, and generally dangerous melee attacks that would keep any player on their toes. Their armor color gave away their rank, which in turn signaled to the player how dangerous they were individually. Blue elites are stock standard, typically with a plasma rifle, maybe a needler. Red elites were slightly stronger. Invisible and gold elites sported energy swords that could instantly kill you if you got too close, and spec up elites were the cream of the crop with the ability to chuck grenades fast. Halo 2 then introduced brutes, who were a mindless, annoying enemy in that game. But they were majorly overhauled in Halo 3. Halo 2's story involved the elites separating from the Covenant and joining forces with humanity, so the brutes basically had to step up and fill their shoes to become their main replacement. Brutes were basically given the same role that elites once had, now sporting even heavier weaponry and tankier roles. Since Halo Reach was a prequel, they were able to add in both of these enemies, although elites pretty much took the main focus. Brutes were slightly dumbed down, but they still maintained their equal footing with the player. This is the role I'm talking about, and every single Halo game has needed them to add to the proverbial game of chess that the player will always find themselves in. Grunts, jackals, and drones are pawns. They're below the player. The player can easily dispatch them no problem. Enemies like the hunters are above the player. They're essentially mini-bosses that require full, undivided attention from a player. This leaves an important slot open to elites and brutes, where the player is encountering AI just like them. They use similar weapons, they have similar behavior, and each offer a variety and challenge depending on what rank and type they are. I'm guessing Promethean Knights were meant to be added to this roster. It's clear that 343 wanted to go in a vastly different direction in regards to their enemy lineup than Bungie did. They wanted more slick-looking robot enemies, and some have speculated that this was mainly to get the game to a T rating. Yeah, I'm not kidding. A lot of people think that the introduction of Prometheans as these mindless, bloodless robots was eventually to get Halo down from a mature rating. I mean, I'm not really convinced on this, but it is clear that 343 were pushing for Prometheans to be the next thing in Halo. Halo 1 through 3 had the Flood as an alternate faction, so I'm guessing that Halo 4 through 6 would have the Prometheans. Anyway, Knights were supposed to be the elite brute stand-in, being the backbone of Halo 4's 3 classes of Promethean enemies. Except either due to, maybe rushed development or simple oversight, they lack the same features that brutes and elites have that make them fun. Promethean Knights look cool, they can teleport around, they incorporate weapons directly into their arms seamlessly, and they can generate watchers. On paper, they sound like a good enemy. In practice, you realize very quickly that being slick and cool looking doesn't equal fun to fight. Okay, first, their teleportation is annoying. Elites in Halo were always able to take cover to regain their shields. Brutes were a little more impulsive and would continuously charge the player, considering their shields never recharged. So elites are the ones that we'll be comparing these knights to. Elites in Halo 1, 2, and even Reach had slow shield recharge times. When you popped an elite's shield in those games, they would give you anywhere from 12 to 15 seconds before they started to recharge. This gave you a sizable window of opportunity to finish off the remaining health. During this time, elites might sometimes dodge for cover. They might physically run or roll out of the way, and they'd require the player to go out and hunt them before their timer runs out. Remember my distinct choice in words. They would physically move. Players could physically see and follow elites to where they would retreat to. This is going to be important in just a sec. Anyways, this also added some value in not simply picking off elites from afar, but instead there was some value in getting in close with them, getting in the thick of things. It spiced up combat, it kept the player moving, and it created this ebb and flow of popping shields and getting the final shot. Promethean Knights, on the other hand, do not follow this philosophy in the slightest. Remember when I said that elites had shield timers that would last at least 12 seconds? Well, in Halo 4, it takes 3 seconds. 3 fucking seconds! So what always happens is that a knight will have their shields popped, and they'll immediately teleport behind cover. Not run to cover, no, teleport to cover. So not only do you immediately lose any progress on damaging their shields that you once had, but now you have no fucking idea where they are. So that's bad enough, right? But guess what 343 completely skimped out on? Visual variety, or any visual cues for that matter. Yeah, you thought I was done talking about 343 and their visuals. Knights can hold on to pretty much every single Promethean weapon. Light rifles are one thing, but scatter shots, binary rifles, incineration cannons, those are insta-kill power weapons. The problem here is that there is no visual indication of what rank they are, or what they're even holding. I mean, sure, there's some slight variations in the knights visually, like some of their armor is different, but those differences are so friggin' subtle. I literally have to squint to see them. Also, I've played through this game multiple times. I literally don't remember that they look different visually. As far as I'm concerned, they all looked the same. It's embarrassing. Oh yeah, the Battle Wagon Knight looks so much more different than the Commander Knight. No, wait, that's the Lancer Knight. Oh wait, which one's the Battle Wagon Knight? Oh geez, I'm already confused. There's another level of hilarious insanity. Guess what? Every knight can just pretty much hold any weapon that they want. Like, there is barely any difference between what rank a knight is versus what weapons it can carry. Let me list them all. They all can carry hard light blades, you know, they're insta-kill melee attacks. They all can carry light rifles. Most can carry suppressors, most can carry scatter shots, most can carry incineration cannons, and only one of them can carry a binary rifle. See, isn't that simple and easy to understand? So not only is it a fucking challenge in and of itself to distinguish what kind of knight you're looking at with these bionicle ass looking motherfuckers, but the actual important visual cues to look for, their guns, are all these silver and orange metallic blobs that all look the fucking same from more than 3 feet away. There's nothing distinct visually about any of these fuckers. Hey, do you remember elites? Do you remember brutes? Can you guess what the very, very first thing Bungie did when designing these guys? Like, how would you design an enemy that would make it easy for a player to tell what kind of rank they were? I'll let you guess. It's probably the very first thing the human eye can see. Color. Blue elites, they're the lowest tier. Red elites, slightly high tier. Gold or black, scary boy tier. Same goes for brutes. Low tier, high tier, scary boy tier. Hell, I think the brutes actually have even better visual cues than the elites, especially with their weapons. I love how easy it is to tell what kind of brute you're dealing with from a simple glance from across a fucking level. Brutes holding spikers or plasma rifles have a completely different silhouette, since they have a one-handed weapon stance. But those with brute shots have a very different looking stance, as well as the brute shot itself having a very clear silhouette. Chieftains are even better because not only do they have color variety, with red chieftains wielding hammers and gold chieftains either wielding fuel rods or plasma cannons, but you can also tell what they're holding by just their stance. Chieftains are even better because red chieftains wield these huge gravity hammers that give them a completely different stance and look different than gold chieftains. When I talk about visual cues, this is what I'm talking about. Color and silhouette to help you distinguish what enemy you're dealing with so you know what strategy you gotta use. You can literally glance at these guys from a distance and you immediately know in a heartbeat what rank they are, what weapon they're holding, and what you have to do to kill them. But not for Promethean Knights. I'm literally showing you this footage right now and it is impossible to tell what ranks they are. You gotta pause the video to take a second just to understand what rank this particular knight is and what weapon he's holding. This right here is why the knights fail on a visual level. This definitely has more to do with art direction and graphics, but I think it's pretty important for gameplay. I mean, the most important thing in a Halo game is to figure out what enemy you're fighting. If you can't do that, then I think the gameplay fails. Also, for you fuckers saying that you liked Prometheans, shut your fucking mouth. No, you didn't. Halo Infinite came out, and a lot of people are coping on the fact that they got rid of everything Promethean. Now you're starting to see people trying to say that, oh, the Prometheans are actually pretty fun to fight. I liked fighting the Prometheans. Shut your fucking mouth. No, you didn't. Prometheans are awful. Hey, another great design flaw, and I know we're talking about visuals more than gameplay, but like I said before, they're an important factor in Halo's combat. But another flaw is when their shields pop. I mean, when you can't see their shields pop. I mean, I don't even remember what the shield pop looks like. I think it's kind of this subtle blue hue shift on their armor, but again, you can't fucking tell when their shields are gone. So you're always going to be second guessing yourself on whether or not that's just a result of this game's fucked color correction, or no, that's actually a visual indicator. Hey, remember me? Alright, back to our old pals, the brutes and the elites. Do you know what happens when you shoot their shields? They glow. Matter of fact, they glow brighter and brighter until they completely pop away, leaving a bright blue electricity effect that stands out against their armor. Brutes, I think, are done even better. First, they actually have physical armor that you can see break off. You can literally look at a brute silhouette and see whether or not he still has armor or not. Secondly, it has this beautiful popping sound to it. There's no sweeter sound. Also, in ODST, Bungie still weren't satisfied with this shield break effect, so they added the glowing light effect back into brutes. But again, that was Bungie just going the extra mile to make sure that their enemies were readable and fun to fight, instead of just making them look cool. 343 never got this philosophy. Some goober at 343 spent months designing his Michael Bay Bionicle with intricate details and floating metal bits, and they wanted to show him off so bad that when it came to game balancing, he was too afraid to play around with it. I can just imagine some annoying art designer at 343 making a huge fuss, all because some gameplay designer probably made the suggestion to make the shield break effect even more visible. Hey, should we make the shield effect a bit more obvious to players? It's kind of a flaw that we don't have one already. I mean, it's hard for players to tell whether or not the shields are there or not. But I want my player to see all my hard work. I want them to see how much creativity I put into my robot monsters. Are you sure? I mean, the elites and brutes are pretty recognizable. Can we just add a simple shield break effect? No! I want my knights to look cool and badass, and I want them to all have swords, and they all have glowing orange bits, and I want them to have bigger penises than Bungie. Okay, I have a question. I need to ask this. I don't even know if anyone can answer this. What the fuck is the point of a watcher? It's a guy that floats around and can create shields, catch grenades, and spawn enemies. And when you shoot them, they immediately fly away. I mean, literally, they always fly away to cover that you can't get to. No altering strategy, no change in tactics, nothing. They will literally run to cover when you shoot them, or fly to cover, then they'll wait for you to stop before they go back to spawning in yet another knight. Also, this is complete bullshit. The fact that you can literally blow all your ammo on a single knight, watch it deploy a watcher, and then watch the same watcher spawn a brand new knight at full health is fucking annoying. And I know what you fucking bad faith arguing Halo 4 fans are about to say in the comments. I just know it. You're about to say, Andy, what about the engineers? Engineers were in ODST and Reach. This is important because while they were considered for every Halo from 1 to 3, Bungie waited until the prequel spin-offs to add them, likely aware of how annoying a floating support role enemy was. I guess 343 never took the message. Anyways, engineers are completely different to watchers. Here's a few reasons why. Number 1, they are slow. Engineers are very, very slow-moving targets. They'll float away from you, keyword float, as they can't exactly escape you. They're very slow and they're very easy to follow. Number 2, they don't respawn enemies. Pretty self-explanatory. You kill anyone around an engineer, they won't be able to respawn a brand new one. Number 3, they don't literally stop damage. Engineers don't stop grenades or give enemies near invulnerable shields. It's a passive effect that gives all enemies a slight overshield that the player can still break with enough force. Also, this overshield effect has this bright, unique color to it, so you can tell by glancing at an enemy that there's an engineer nearby. Once again, Bungie is the king of visual cues. Number 4, engineers are always somewhere up high. Like, really up high. It's actually something I never noticed until replaying Reach and ODST, but it's interesting how their pathing naturally leads them up to the ceilings of tall rooms, meaning that a player has an even better chance of taking potshots at them than they would with a watcher. You can look up towards the ceiling or high up in the sky, and you will see an engineer that you can easily shoot without worrying that they're going to dart behind cover. There's little to no cover that they can hide behind, so they're easy targets. Number 5, most important point. Engineers were used sparingly. They are used in a handful of sections. Matter of fact, in Reach, you can only find them in a handful of levels, period. Engineers were one of many enemies used in these games, being just a spice that Bungie would throw in every now and then. They weren't a standard enemy type, but Watchers, they are everywhere. You want to know why? It's because 343 only made 3 fucking Prometheans. So of course they can't just have one type that's barely used while the rest are overused. So Watchers are then thrown in to just balance everything out, which instead they completely ruin the balance of the game. Every battle has at least 1 or 2 Watchers, every knight can spawn them, every single encounter with a Promethean has at least a few Watchers. They're always there. So unlike Engineers, whose gameplay design gave them some wiggle room with the player, Watchers take full priority no matter what you're doing. They require your full attention to kill alongside an entire mag dump of whatever the hell precision gun you're holding. Which, guess what, is probably going to be the light rifle. Hey, what a transition. Weapons in Halo 4. They're not good. Honestly, this is something 343 has actually done for every single Halo game that they have made, where they'll just add in and remove weapons that make no sense. Like, it feels completely random. They don't remove an old staple weapon or add in a completely new one for balance. Oftentimes, it just feels like it's a dice roll. This also became abundantly clear when Halo Infinite released. Teaser. Halo 4 has the problem of simply having too many redundant weapons. You have 3 automatic weapons that all behave the same. You got 4 mid-range weapons that, once again, act pretty much the same. Also, as pointed out by others, the DMR is noticeably stronger than seen before, making it a cheap weapon to use in multiplayer. Hey, who are these 3? Meet the light rifle, aka we were too lazy to come up with a new weapon design, so we literally just combined the BR and DMR into the same gun and didn't understand the ramifications of it. The assault rifle, but glowy in orange, and the bolt shot. A pretty average pistol, except for when you charge it, it gives you a fucking insta-kill pocket shotgun blast that's actually stronger than a real shotgun. Yeah. Hope you like these weapons, because this is what you'll be using for the entire duration of your playthrough. I'm not exaggerating when I say that 80% of all the weapons dropped in this game, be it from an enemy or from a weapon storage locker, will be either a suppressor or a light rifle. I'm not kidding. Because the problem is that at a certain point, most of the enemies are Prometheans. Like, the Covenant fuck off after a certain point, so you're going to be fighting Prometheans that carry these guns. So it's going to be what you pick up most of the time because it's the only thing that has ammo. Oh yeah, the ammo. Do you like ammo for your guns? Well, fuck you, Halo 4 doesn't have any. Throughout this video, I kind of made fun of 343 for clearly never testing any of their gameplay mechanics before they implement them. Here's possibly the biggest example of that. The fucking ammunition. There apparently wasn't a single 343 employee or QA tester that beat the game on Heroic. Because guess what? On Heroic, you always run out of ammo. Ammo is scarce, and given how the game encourages you to use only precision weapons with maybe an automatic weapon if you're desperate enough, chances are you're never switching to another gun, even just to experiment. Even grabbing a power weapon is risky because, again, you're dropping a gun with a full magazine. That's going to haunt you later in the level when you need a gun that actually has ammo. So let me explain ammo in this game and why I think it's bad. I think a huge part of it has to do with the shield recharge time, plus the very little damage that's done to shields by any non-power weapon. I'm not kidding, you're going to pull your hair out at just how weird this game's combat feels. It'll take 2 entire magazines of suppressor ammo just to break a knight's shield, only for them to teleport away, regain it 3 seconds later, forcing you to lose all your ammo yet again. Do you see the problem? Bungie Halo incentivized experimentation and changing up playstyles. It's all about seeing what weapons you have at your disposal, what you can play around with, and how you can change your tactics in a battle. Enemies had a longer shield recharge time, and they weren't able to fucking teleport out of there if they lost their shields. So players had an incentive to run in there to do a risky charge into the middle of a firefight, just to get a kill on a low health elite or a brute. But not here. Not in Halo 4. In Halo 4, their shields recharge so fucking fast, and since they can teleport, there is no incentive for you to get into the thick of the action. Matter of fact, this game clearly wants you to do one thing and one thing alone. Find a piece of cover, plant your butt behind it, and then pop out and take pot shots at an enemy from across a room. Like, you know, Gears of War or fucking Call of Duty. Hey, speaking of, let's talk about 2 things: projectile tracking and enemy melee timing. You probably thought I forgot about this when I was ranting about Prometheans, but nope. We have to talk about how 343 completely fucked up with enemy tracking and timing. First, the enemy shot tracking in this game is unfucking believable. Every Halo game has had hit scan. Halo 3 tried to veer away from it. They also had projectiles that would loosely track you. Notice the word loosely, because it wasn't always a guaranteed hit. A fast enough player could easily escape a barrage of needle rounds if they tried. Plasma shots were slow enough for strafing to be viable. Charge plasma shots were just slow enough for any player with a good reaction time to jump out of the way to save their shields from breaking. 343 never figured this out. Since Halo 4, their projectile tracking has been horrendous. It is unbalanced, untested, and completely breaks the flow of combat. I'm not exactly sure how it got this bad, although I highly suspect it may have been a last-minute change to make the guns far easier to handle on an Xbox controller. Aiming charged plasma shots or needler rounds are much easier when you can literally have a lock-on that is super fast and impossible to dodge. While this, in theory, would make the gameplay more approachable to players, it has the unintended consequence of making open spaces nigh impossible to navigate without you getting blown up by needle rounds. This is made even worse by the fact that I don't even think enemies have a cutoff range for when they'll stop shooting at you. Again, Bungie Halo, enemies would at least stop shooting at you from a certain distance. But here, there's either no limit to how far enemies will stop shooting at you, or the arenas are simply too small that there is no way you can escape from an enemy's hit scan. Instead, the only way to survive is to quite literally hide behind cover. Poke your head up, hide behind cover, aim around a corner, hide behind cover, jump out in the open trying to rush towards another position, get stuck by 100 needlers and die instantly. Yeah, you should have stayed in cover, you fucking scrub. It's funny how on paper this is just a small change that shouldn't have that much of an effect on the combat, but so many of these bad decisions pile on to the point where it's basically an avalanche of bad gameplay experiences. All of a sudden, using vehicles on wide open areas becomes completely impossible given just how many projectiles the enemies spam at you. Flying banshees are a death sentence given how easy it is to take damage from enemies from every conceivable fucking direction, a lesson 343 would never learn from. Also, for whatever reason, enemies will charge their plasma pistols like way more frequently. I mean, in old Halos, enemies would do this, but it was only like every now and then. You encountered a Covenant squad, maybe one grunt or a jackal would charge his pistol to try and break your shields or EMP your vehicle. Here, it's all the fucking time. I noticed this too because the new plasma pistol charge up sound is this annoyingly loud sound effect that you can hear constantly when you're in a firefight. Seriously, as you're watching this video right now, I want you to take a mental note of how many enemies you see that are charging their plasma pistols. Like honestly, I think maybe someone at 343 mistyped an integer value or something. So now the AI is way more predisposed to want to EMP your vehicle than in other games. Another thing is melee. I don't know how 343 fucked up the melee attack, but they managed to. Okay, melee has always been a dangerous enemy attack in every Halo. On certain difficulties and with certain weapons, it can be an insta-kill. So even a low-ranking elite or brute can do some damage if you're going in for an ill-advised punch or close-range attack. But the thing is, all of them have their own flourish before they attack. Elites have a slow melee attack, either a punch or a kick, and while Halo elites were a bit fast, you'd have a window of opportunity to break their shields before they made a beeline for you. Brutes also had an exaggerated telegraphed attack, especially when they went berserk, with a long cooldown in between attacks and a steady running pace that could give you enough time to line up a headshot. Zealots had a bright glowing blue energy sword that gave themselves away on the battlefield, and as such they would give the player ample time to strafe, back up, and keep pouring lead into them until they were no longer standing. Brute chieftains had some amazing AI. In a large group with a bunch of other brutes, the chieftains will wait and let their buddies take on the Master Chief first. He'll hang back, amped up, but kinda trying to buy some time until he has no choice but to run in, which will usually happen once you kill enough of his buddies. His run is easy to see, and the second you see him bolting towards you, you know you gotta change your strategy to either leap away to safety, run away from him, strafe, all the while keeping steady gunfire on him until his shields break. Finally, you got hunters, which are literally designed around slow, easy to see telegraphed attacks. They have a really easy to dodge fuel rod attack and a slow, easy to dodge melee attack. Both of these are brutally dangerous attacks, but if you're smart enough, you can easily dodge them, no problem. However, somewhere along the line, someone at 343 decided that these attacks needed to be instantaneous. Fuel rod shots are fast moving, they have no charge up, and they're basically undodgeable. If the hunter can get a shot off, you're already taking damage no matter what. The melee is even more egregious, as it was a huge part of Hunter's design philosophy. A readable, slow forward charge that allowed players to sidestep and get access to their weak spot on their backs. Not here. Instead, hunters have this really awkward attack where they kind of swing at you and they run forward, but they're super fast and there's no room for you to dodge, so it forces you to utilize jump jets just to strafe around them when he charges you. All of a sudden, that strategy to kill hunters before is no longer applicable here. And once again, individually, these changes should not affect the combat sandbox that much. However, when so many are stacked on top of one another, they create a game flow that is completely broken and restrictive. No longer are you able to run out into a firefight, letting you dodge projectiles, sidestep enemy melee attacks, and get into the thick of things. Instead, you're basically forced to hide behind a tiny piece of cover, pop out with your light rifle, since ammo's plentiful for that particular gun, pop some shots off on an elite or a knight, and then hide behind cover. It's literally too dangerous to run out there. I mean, you can get stabbed, kicked, or blown up by needler rounds. Nope, just hide back, shoot from afar. That is your only safe strategy. So yeah, you're going to be spending the entire game hiding around a piece of cover. Speaking of, we got to talk about something that led to this in the first place.
Still good for something, I guess.
343's new approach to gameplay with undodgeable attacks and bias against movement, the levels had to be made to reflect that. So before we even talk about Halo 4's levels, we need to do a quick breakdown of the level design in Halos prior to it. Halo 1 by far had the largest, most open levels. Levels were vast, allowing unscripted enemy encounters and unique player strategies that could all change on different playthroughs. Unlike shooting galleries like Call of Duty, Halo focused on the sandbox. This was an emphasis on not necessarily scripted tight roller coaster rides that would play the same upon repeat playthroughs. Rather, it was all about having the AI dynamically react to you, each other, and the level itself. This included vehicles, enemy variety, AI variety, enemies fighting amongst themselves, and fighting you. Levels in Halo 1 supported this, with huge open arenas, tons of explorable spaces, some verticality, and large, vast environments. Halo 2 was a bit more linear. It still had the same sandbox gameplay, although it had it in much more narrow levels. levels, although it does make up for it in the fact that there's tons more verticality, levels are multi-layered, there's a little more dynamic combat going on. It's still pretty good stuff. Halo 3 was a return to form to Halo 1 sandboxes, while also maintaining some of Halo 2's linearity. It beefed up the sandbox, added in a ton new enemies, AI, weapons, even vehicles. Levels here were once again huge, with large open arenas and even areas that would require backtracking. ODST was basically more of the same for Halo 3, more open sandboxes, some insanely huge areas, while also a few more linear sections that would be opened up later into larger arenas. Reach, I think, had an underrated amount of open sandboxes in its level design. While its campaign wasn't the strongest story-wise, its levels, I think, were pretty top-notch. Every single level lacked the linear corridors that had come before it, and instead levels were big, open, and mostly unscripted. A lot of the levels in Reach were like this. Halo 4 doesn't have this at all. Since enemies are way more accurate and now most of them teleport to safety, the player needs more generic pieces of cover to hide behind. Since enemy projectile tracking is also super dangerous and doesn't seem to have a range limit, levels now need to stay cramped and walled off. Gone are levels like Silent Cartographer, Metropolis, and the Ark. Instead, levels in Halo 4 need to be tight corridors. They must be linear, they must provide enough cover for the player to hide behind. You also lose a ton of verticality since having enemies above or below you would add to the chaos that would likely add in even more confusion, given how difficult it'd be to dodge their shots. So every level was slightly flattened. There was barely any need to look up or down, barely any arenas had more than 2 floors. I think at most I've seen arenas in Halo 4 have like 2 levels and that's it. And that's Halo 4's on-foot level design. But Halo games all have vehicles, remember? Every good Halo game has at least a pretty good vehicle section. Well, Halo 4 tries to add to them, but unfortunately they were handicapped by their own sandbox. You can no longer have levels like 2 Betrayals, or the Covenant, or New Alexandria, because enemies will pelt you constantly from a distance, no matter how high up you are in the air, and there'd be no way to dodge them. So you can't have massive open arenas, because the AI likely wasn't programmed to handle them. The closest any level gets to this in Halo 4 is Shutdown, which feels like it was only added not because 343 had an idea for a fun aerial level, but because some boardroom committee at 343 or Microsoft decided that the player had to fly around at least once in a Halo 4 level. Basically like checking off a box or filling a quota. Because every Halo game before them had a flying level, so ours needs one as well. So it's a compromise between Halo 4's restrictive sandbox and 343's limited level design, which is to say, god awful. Instead of something insane like New Alexandria, letting you fly between different objectives while encountering unique little enemy arenas along the way, Halo 4 has you fly to generic Forerunner towers, shoot at phantoms, go through a linear level, then leave, rinse and repeat. I find it hilarious how Halo 4 remains the only Halo game to date that lets you fly a Pelican. And for the life of me, I never remembered it. It's always, oh yeah, the mission in Halo 4 did give you a Pelican, but why didn't I remember that? And then after replaying it, I realized why. It's because you barely use it. You basically use it to shoot down vehicles from afar. Whenever you land, the game reverts back to the same old linear corridor shooting as the rest of the game. That goes for every other vehicle sections too. Sure, you can drive a Warthog, a Scorpion, and even a Mantis, but all those vehicles are in linear corridors and paths. You have no alternate routes, ways to sneak around and change your line of attack. Instead, it's all a repetitive shooting gallery. It's generic and uninteresting. Everything Halo shouldn't be. There is one level that potentially has room to feel like a proper Halo, and that's the level Reclaimer. The premise is that you're riding on a giant mammoth, basically a rip-off version of the elephant but much bigger, and you're using various guns and turrets on the side to take out enemies in open arena sections as the mammoth slowly meanders through the level. I also remember a part where you have to fly up into a Covenant ship and blow it up from the inside. That sounds like a pretty cool idea for a level. Well, problems arise once you realize how limited the level actually is. For starters, the mammoth, is quite literally meant to keep you on rails. Sure, you can navigate around as it moves, but it's quite literally meant to keep you from moving from one zone to the next. It's taking care of it for you. Another problem is that the layout of this level consists of these little arena sections where the mammoth stops, you get out, kill every enemy, you complete the objective, then you move on. It's basically what could have been a fun giant open level, but instead of giving us everything at once, 343 had to space it out piecemeal, one tiny section at a time, all in a certain order to the point where you lose all the meat that it could have had. Man, that's actually kind of representative of 343 as a whole. This could have been a fun level. Granted, you'd have to ignore the librarian lore dump halfway through that single-handedly ruined the series. However, 343's insistence on keeping it linear and keeping each arena limited in scope just sucks the air out of it. Time to make another unfair comparison, because that's what I love to do in this video. Let's look at the Ark from Halo 3, which just so happens to be my favorite level in that game. I think this is actually a really good compare and contrast, because both levels share a ton of features. Aesthetically, they look similar, a desert with canyons, cliffs, and occasional Forerunner corridors and structures. They're also both long, winding levels that give you plenty of marine companions, sniping sections, large open vehicle arenas, a tank section, a set piece where you have to take down a giant Covenant vehicle, and some good old on-foot combat sections. Where they differ, however, is in how they were designed. I could go into detail about how the level fits the game story-wise, how Reclaimer's lore dump was clearly shoehorned into the mission without any care and where it lied in the overall plot. I could also contrast that to how the Ark was a beautiful introduction to this brand new Forerunner world after a lengthy first half set on Earth. I could talk about how dynamic and fast the story and plot developments are in the Ark, with the stage changing every 5 to 10 minutes, while in Reclaimer it limps along at a snail's pace, throws something exciting at you out of nowhere, then keeps limping along till the end of the level. But I'm not here to talk about that. Instead, I'm here to talk about how these levels focus on combat and gameplay, and why they feel so different, despite sounding and looking pretty similar. First, the gameplay doesn't help. Halo 3 had amazing combat, it encouraged movement, weapon experimentation, and dynamic AI sandboxes. Halo 4, as I stated earlier, has unbalanced enemies, broken AI, broken weapons, and overall incentivizes hiding behind cover. Matter of fact, I think the Mammoth's entire existence in this level is just to keep providing the player with ammo, since the player is going to run out of it quickly no matter what. And it ensures that the player has at least somewhere to hide to fall back on in most arenas, given how a lot of these areas are wide open flat spaces with the occasional conveniently player-sized rock to hide behind. It's clear that the Mammoth was just thrown in there to keep the level from falling apart. The Ark is this sprawl of cliffside pathways, large open vehicle arenas, and some more closed-off interiors. Reclaimer's objectives are also really arbitrary, and I blame it mostly on the Mammoth. Once again, it's cool in concept until you realize that the player is going to spend the entire level waiting for this thing to get from point A to point B. Then the player has to wait for it to stop. The player is then going to have to complete some asinine boring objective, like destroying these shield transmitters, or jumping up to this Covenant dropship that is conveniently hovering there waiting for me, or destroying even more shield transmitters. Actually, seriously, what's the fucking deal with Halo 4 and these shielded transmitters? Let's jump back to Halo 3. The Ark is this wonderful meandering path that effortlessly takes you from point A to point B, and you take this path yourself. There's no waiting on the Mammoth Express. Just pick up a Warthog, a Mongoose, or a Prowler and navigate to the rendezvous point. From there, it's once more another trek. A little bit of backtracking, except this time you have a tank and you're fighting wraiths. Also, side note, these vehicle arenas are much better than Halo 4. Halo 4 gives you flat sections with some rocks interspersed to give you some sort of cover. Halo 3, however, has all these unique looking areas with their own dynamics to them. I love how I can flash an image on screen for any one of these vehicle arenas, and I bet most of you watching can immediately tell exactly where this is and the enemies that would spawn here. You have ridges, platforms, vertical small cliff sides, culminating in the Scarab battle, which starts off with you fighting ghosts and grunts on a downward slope with wraiths shooting at you from afar, and finally a giant open space with a ramp, giving you plenty of strategies to destroy the Scarab. But Halo 4, it has nothing. Every single section is exactly the same, likely because the level designer at 343 didn't have a clear understanding of the arena. This section in Halo 3 had a clear defined goal. Player starts here, moves down the hill, gets a tank, and eventually fights the Scarab. But here, the only goal is to destroy an arbitrary number of these shielded transmitters. Transmitters that the level designer probably had no fucking idea where they'd be placed. They seem pretty arbitrary to me. Yeah, just put these seemingly important machines just out in the open on these sand dunes with no protection. Just kind of throw them around there. Hey, remember in Halo 3 how the Covenant were trying to assemble anti-air and they picked this really hard to reach cliffside vantage point with a ton of protection inside this carved out circular area? Remember how it offered really fun gameplay because you had all these areas to navigate and move between? Yeah. I miss old Halo. Finally, the last thing this level doesn't have, and is indicative of Halo 4 in general, is pacing. I'm not just talking about whiplash from all the lore that's thrown at you, I'm talking about how slow and boring Halo 4's level is, just waiting on this mammoth to take you to the next arena. Halo 3, despite having its own slow movement speed, is pretty fucking balls to the wall fast. You constantly have no time to just dilly-dally as you move your butt through a level while something epic happens. Running through a self-destructing base, maybe a self-destructing ring world. You are constantly moving through these levels at a fast pace. In the Ark, you're given a ton of vehicles to choose from, and you're able to zoom through these parts with ease. In Halo 4, you're going to find yourself walking through big empty arenas, a lot. In Halo 3, you can do stunt jumps and ram into enemies. In Halo 4, you can maybe use a tank, but then you have to hop out and slowly make your way to a shielded transmitter. Halo 3's Arc level had an amazing pace. Sure, it has slow moments, but they're moments in between amazing fast action. Halo 4's slow moments are the action. Remember the final bit in the Arc where you move through a beautiful Forerunner facility that didn't blind your face with glowing lights? Remember how fun it was to see an homage to Halo 1 level design? It had a good flow with fun combat sections and finally a cool standoff with a cocky brute chieftain and his buddies. Meanwhile, Halo 4 has some flat shooting galleries with player-high walls. Yeah, that's it. That's everything Halo 4 has to offer in its level design. Boring, repetitive, flat arena sections with a very slow pace. I could go on even further, because honestly I could do a whole fucking multi-hour video breaking down how every level in Halo 4 is a pale comparison to a much better level in a different Halo game. For example, Dawn is a more lame attempt of recreating Pillar of Autumn and Cairo Station, except it's way more linear, it's way shorter, and there are way more QuickTime events. Requiem is an attempt to recapture Halo 1's mission Halo, except it's far more linear and lifeless than Halo. Infinity seems to be 343 trying to recreate Sierra 117 with a bit of Delta Halo's vehicle sections thrown in there, except once again it's much more linear and it lacks any fun or memorable arena sections. Once again, it's just a flat level with player-high cover scattered around. Shutdown is a bad attempt at New Alexandria, except with none of the exploration and far less aerial combat than you think. And you spend way more time on the ground than in the air. And Midnight, I believe, is an attempt to one-up the Warthog run by combining it with Long Night of Solace from Reach. Except the level itself is this large obstacle course that's comedically artificial looking, lacking any sense of immersion or grandness that Halo Reach's level had. It also doesn't have a meaningful end level that nearly every other Halo game had before it. It's just a boring slog to the end. So yeah, that was a long rant, but I needed to be specific here. These levels aren't just bad, they're objectively bad, but mainly they're a symptom of Halo 4's bad game design as a whole. Halo 4 was literally the worst Halo game when it came out. Its combat sucks, its level design sucks, it feels shit to play, like it's just bad, you guys. A whole new type of balancing had to be created that no other Halo game needed up until this point. While the Halos before encouraged movement, moving between weapon pickups, targeting different enemies, and changing up your approach with different weapons and strategies, here there is literally no variety. Every single enemy encounter in Halo 4 is a checklist. You pick up the light rifle, kill the Watcher, kill the Knight from a distance, finish off other enemies from a distance, get more ammo for the light rifle, and repeat over and over and over and over. There is no change to this formula. Occasionally you will have a poorly implemented vehicle section followed by more of the same. It's dull and repetitive and it'll drive you insane before you even get halfway through the game. This is why Halo 4 is bad. It's just poorly designed from the ground up. Also, I didn't even mention the god-awful Spartan abilities. All these useless power-ups, the hilariously bad auto-turret, the Promethean vision which is mostly redundant because, oh gee, if only the game gave you a motion sensor right from the start. Everything about Halo 4's combat and gameplay design feels unbalanced, untested, and as a result, unfun. Ah, the multiplayer. I would make a whole section on multiplayer, but most of this follows pretty close to gameplay, with the exception of one point. So the multiplayer, it's crap. I've tried to stay pretty objective the whole video, as hilarious as that might seem. I've been trying to explain gameplay and story mechanics down point by point, to at least get people who might like this game's bad repetitive combat to at least understand that it's objectively worse than most Halo games. Talking about multiplayer though, I'll fully admit, it's going to be pretty subjective. There's lots of problems with it, a lot of which I'll simply boil down to one main central point: Call of Dutyization. Halo 4 is trying to be Call of Duty, literally. Halo 5 especially wanted to be Call of Duty, but 4 is where we saw 343 first try this. Everything about this game screams early 2010s desperation to appeal to the Call of Duty fanbase. This happened to a lot of games back in the day. Matter of fact, some games were literally created from the ground up just to meet this demand. It was just a part of the industry for a time. Of course, in hindsight, it's obvious to see that this was a bad idea, trying to appeal to a casual lowest common denominator audience. In our 2022 goggles, we can see that this never works. Not only that, but we can literally explain why this doesn't work. The people who play Call of Duty will only really stick with Call of Duty. Ushering the herds of sheep to your game might work briefly, but hilariously it's a self-destructive cycle. If a person is dumb enough to flock to your game because it's like a more popular game, then they'll just as easily flock to a similar game that's also similar to the popular game. Or better yet, they might just go back to the popular game. Call of Duty isn't necessarily the giant it once was. I think a better analogy might be Fortnite these days, but my point still stands. Grabbing a casual audience is hard and almost never works out so long as you want to maintain your game's uniqueness. Remember, normies are easily frightened by weirdness, and they'd much rather play the latest year's release of Call of Duty than stick with a good game that's only a few years old. This goes directly against Halo and Halo fans. These are people who play online multiplayer that's over a decade old. They stick with it. They continue to play matches in it. When Halo 3 was modded to work on PC during the Halo El Dorito days, there were literally more people playing it than there were Halo 5. That's how much this community doesn't mind playing something old. Man, it's a good thing Microsoft shut that down, isn't it? It's also funny because Halo already had a large audience. It didn't really need to appeal to any other group. But I'm starting to suspect Microsoft probably got a little too greedy. They saw that Call of Duty audience. Maybe they just wanted a piece of that huge Call of Duty pie. Or maybe the 343 devs were too unfamiliar with Halo's multiplayer, so they wanted something generic and easy for casuals to pick up and play. Realistically, it's probably a combination of the two. Either way, Halo 4's multiplayer is steeped in these horrible gameplay decisions that are entirely made just to ape off of Call of Duty. Let's list them, shall we? Loadouts and perks. By far the biggest change to Halo 4 and one of the biggest reasons the multiplayer doesn't work. Halo games work off of everyone being on the same footing. You all spawn with the same weapons, all the weapons on the map are there for everyone to take, so it's all about skill and map control. Loadouts simply let the players relax with their chosen weapons, which can literally be a BR, DMR, and a light rifle. These are starters that turn Halo 4 into a boring game of pop out of cover, shoot at somebody from a distance, and retreat. Weapons on a map are also randomized. Yeah, completely random. So there's little to no point in map control. In Halo 3, everyone knew where the Grav Hammer and Guardian is, or in Halo 2, where the Shotgun and Lockout is. These became contested areas and encouraged players to engage in certain parts of the map. The need to look for weapons is what creates a dynamic battle and is what keeps players from camping in their spawns and taking potshots from afar. But in Halo 4, there's no such thing as map control. The randomized weapons that spawn on a map mean that there's pretty much no point to map control. Because what's the point if you don't know where a weapon is going to spawn? And everyone can already spawn with a pretty good starting weapon anyways, so why even bother understanding a map's layout? This turns the game into a boring cover shooter where no one is out there trying to grab power items. Instead, they're all just shooting from across the map with the guns in their loadout that they don't even have to worry about losing. Because once they die, they get it right back. Plus, vehicle combat becomes very problematic when literally everyone and their mother can spawn with a plasma pistol. Yeah, good luck using the Banshee when some guy can respawn and instantly EMP you. Oh, that's right, you can also equip perks. Yeah, perks. Perks that will literally dictate how better you are in the game than other players. Shit like having your grenade do more damage, or being able to spawn with 2 primary weapons, or being able to reload much faster than anybody else. At a certain point, you just have to accept that this multiplayer is not Halo anymore. You lose that level playing field that old Halo multiplayers had. Instead, it's all about having the right loadout and the right specializations. I mean, sure, if you like Call of Duty, this might sound fine to you, but for Halo fans, we didn't want the entire multiplayer to be gutted and destroyed like this. Secondly, they added in kill streaks. Kind of amazing how blatant 343 were at copying COD when they added in kill streaks. These are exactly as they sound. Get a certain number of kills, call an ordnance pod full of these 3 random goodies. That's it. You literally get kill streaks in Halo 4. As if being able to choose your own spawn weapon wasn't enough, now you can just call down power-ups or power weapons from the sky at the press of a button. There also isn't even a delay on it. Like, I'd say this is similar to the care package from Call of Duty, but that had a significant wait time in which anything could happen. Your helicopter could get shot down, you could die before the package drops, or if you couldn't get to it, someone else might steal it. But no, in Halo 4, it's instantaneous. So once again, not only does this game encourage players to camp in one side of the map, spamming the other player with BR, DMR, or light rifle fire, but if you keep getting kills, you can literally earn yourself some of the best shit in the game without even moving. Yeah, it's shit. This is my last gripe with the multiplayer, and don't worry, we're almost done here, folks. The custom game support is abysmal. This doesn't have so much to do with Halo 4 being a Call of Duty clone, but it's definitely a result of 343's twisted priorities. Every Halo game before Halo 4 had a focus on custom games. This meant custom game modes and by Halo 3 custom forge maps. Halo 4 and 343 as a whole really don't like this. They really don't like players playing on their own custom maps, on their own custom game modes outside of matchmaking. It's why custom games are always broken in every 343 Halo game on launch to date. It's also why custom game modes in Forge itself are either broken, have missing features, or just straight up missing on launch. Halo Infinite came out last November, it still doesn't have Forge. At a certain point, I'm starting to wonder whether or not this is genuine incompetence on 343's part, or genuine malice. Like, Is there a reason why 343 intentionally doesn't try to support custom games? That might be a conspiracy, but I'm throwing that out there. Anyway, when Halo 4 launched, quite a few game modes were left out, and Forge itself was massively downgraded from Reach. There was no simple flat canvas map on launch to work from. Instead, you had an ugly space map, an ugly underground map, and then a Forge World knockoff barely a fraction of the size, with no open flat area to edit. They added this island map later, but the game's population was non-existent by then. Quite a few game modes were unable to make the transition from Reach to 4, and map makers simply left Halo behind. What could have been a core pillar of the Halo franchise was simply left behind and is now seen as an optional extra. That's how sad things have become. A lot of people really forget just how bad Halo 4's player drop-off really was. It was actually kind of remarkable to see at the time, just because seeing such a huge population count dive to half in the span of a month. That was pretty impressive to see. Of course, months went by and the count dropped even further. Entire playlists became unplayable since no one was in them. Halo 4 died a slow, painful death as 343 gave up on it. Spartan Ops limped along for a few more months, although people were only interested to watch the pre-rendered cutscenes as they were slowly uploaded to YouTube. No one played them. Matter of fact, I don't think anyone's played Spartan Ops since 2013. If you want proof, go try and load up a few missions in MCC. Not only are they badly balanced reused maps from the campaign and multiplayer, but some of them will actually crash the game. I'm not kidding, like, loading this will crash MCC. It's funny because nobody knows this, nor does 343 know this, because no one fucking plays them, because it's all garbage. It's literally the campaign, but worse. I'm bringing this up because even now in 2022, I see a lot of fake love for Halo 4. People pretending it was a hidden gem, something that was actually good that people overlooked. I bring up Spartan Ops specifically because a lot of people are complaining that there's no Spartan Ops in Halo Infinite. Yet it's currently broken in MCC and nobody, not even 343, know about this, because not a single person has been complaining about it anywhere online. So to me, it's easy to see just how none of this is organic. Like, there was no organic movement of people who actually liked Halo 4. It all came out of nowhere and none of them have literally played the game. Because if they did, then you'd see people complaining about how broken it is. Yet for whatever reason, you'll mysteriously find people on Reddit or Waypoint saying that Halo Infinite should get Spartan Ops because they love the mode from Halo 4. This to me is the clearest picture that all this revival of Halo 4's love is just astroturfed. It's funny because literally no one is playing Halo 4, which is how I'm able to tell that it's all fake support too. The campaign is still broken, it still has tons of glitches, Spartan Ops is broken, half the time doesn't work, and multiplayer is a ghost town. My theory is that it's more of a nostalgic memory to a lot of Halo 4 fans who are thinking about it with rose-tinted glasses. Oh yeah, I remember playing Halo 4 after school alongside Call of Duty. Gosh, what a good game, I wish they made that again. That's as far as the thought goes. There's no attempt to replay Halo 4 or load up the campaign or load up Spartan Ops or even multiplayer. Because as soon as you get past that first mission, you immediately realize how bad of a game it is. You turn it off, then you forget about it forever. In conclusion, I don't know, Halo 4 is just a really bad game. I grew up on Halo. For a time, I lived and breathed Halo. And Halo 4 was literally the game that killed my love for the series. Collectively, the Halo community used to agree that Halo 4 was the start of the end. But as time has gone on, you guys really have proven time and time again that you have the memories of a goldfish. You guys are constantly forgiving 343, thinking their next game will be different, thinking it'll change. What's even more sad is that things have gotten so bad that I think a lot of people have been Stockholm syndromed into defending Halo 4. It's become a recent meme online that Halo 4 isn't as bad as we thought, that it's an underrated gem, a great story with a pretty good campaign, that it doesn't deserve the reputation it got. No, it does, and it deserves it in spades. I find it hilarious how when I first approached Halo 4, it wasn't out of malice, it was quite literally out of curiosity to see how this game held up after all these years. Just as I had done with all the other Halo games on MCC, I wanted to replay Halo 4 and see if it stood the test of time. Maybe it might have been a surprise hit. I know that was the case for a couple other Halos. Instead, I got a sour taste in my mouth with bad combat, a bad story, and badly designed levels. A game that was just lacking in quality. At this point, I'm kind of convinced that anyone who still insists that Halo 4 isn't that bad or is underrated literally hasn't played this game in 10 years. Like, seriously. Go play it. Go play the whole campaign right now, set it to heroic from start to finish, then come back to this video and try to tell me that I'm wrong, because I'm not. That's Halo 4, a sad trip down memory lane. It's actually kind of funny revisiting this game to see how 343 is continuously stumbling to this day. It definitely marks the end of the Halo franchise and marks the beginning of Halo as a rotting corpse, a shell of itself puppeted by somebody else. Master Chief is long dead. He's probably drifting by himself in a cryopod, slowly losing oxygen, slipping in and out of consciousness into a dreamless coma. That's Halo to me. It's weird to think that nearly a decade after this game, Halo is still in the exact same spot that it was left in the hands of people who really don't care about it, trying to squeeze every last cent from the brand, who are willing to let it rot. Kind of a bummer ending, but I really don't have anything else to say. I said it already. Halo 4 ended the streak Bungie left for 343. You can shit on Reach as much as you want, you can make fun of modern Bungie, I know I do, but by God, those Bungie games were leagues better than anything 343 has ever managed to put out in the last decade. Well, we're done. That's Halo 4 for you all. Sorry if you were expecting something happy at the end. So wait, if the librarian planted the seeds of the Spartan program in humanity, did she also plan the first Spartan program to fail? You know, the Orion Project? What if that succeeded? Would there still have been a Spartan 2 program? Also, wait, what if Spartans were never greenlit by ONI in the first place? What if some health inspector found their plans to kidnap children and shut them down? Then what? What if the program was canned when the Orion program failed? Did you also place a backup gene song in human DNA that said for them to keep trying? Also, wait, did they need children? Spartan 4s didn't need children, but did the librarian plan for humanity to abduct kids in the first place? Or is that just created for everyone else's part? Wait a sec, I have another question.